Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Mark Eichman. Look up in the sky and you're likely to see drones flying now and even more in the future. It's a business opportunity, and we'll report on how that opportunity could play out this week.
We'll also report on the Delaware connection to a papal comment concerning sexual orientation. A former DuPont executive is at the center of it, and we'll have his story.
And a Delaware school has its own connection to art history. A Picasso comes to talk to students, and in our experience, we check out their takeaway of what they learned.
First, your public media news magazine starts now.
For a long time, drones were primarily used for military purposes. But as technology advances, the civilian world is discovering new applications for the unmanned aircraft in what's predicted to become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Consequently, we're seeing more drone schools pop up, and we take a look at one of them right here in Wilmington in this week's First Look. With the popularity of drones taking off, so too are the money-making opportunities, it seems.
Every industry is going to be impacted or could be impacted by the use of drones.
Theo Nix sees the writing on the wall, which is why the lawyer by trade founded Drone Workforce Solutions, or DWS. With a $59,000 Delaware Department of Labor grant, Nix developed a 10-week, 70-hour curriculum combining classroom work with hands-on flying time for 12 students, tuition free.
We train people who are interested in getting into drone technology by teaching them how to fly drones, how to pass the Federal Aviation Administration exam, how to edit the data that they get, and how to build a drone.
There are other drone schools in Delaware and plenty of online courses to choose from. But Nick says what separates DWS from the rest is it's also an employment agency.
We hire drone operators from around the country. We validate the information that they're FAA certified, that they have their licenses, what kind of drones they fly, where are they in the country. And when we have jobs from employers, we can then send that information to the drone operators and ask them if they're interested in the job. Here's how much they're paying. This is what's required. Who's interested?
Gabe Cruz is a graduate of DWS's inaugural class.
I saw opportunity. I didn't hesitate. I was like, look, it's a new industry that's pretty much untouched territory in Delaware. So I was like, hey, why not?
FAA certified, Cruz is ready to work. FAA certification is required if you want to make money piloting a drone.
This is definitely career worthy. Anybody could make a full-time career out of this. The sky's the limit, so I can do anything from inspections, I can do agricultural, I can do the typical cinematography as well, where I can fly in the sky, do some editing. Editing is going to be a really big skill to have when it comes to aerial drone videography.
And apparently, there's a lot of money to be made around the world. Investment bank Goldman Sachs forecasts drones to grow to a $100 billion industry by 2020 worldwide. Demand from the military is projected to account for $70 billion. Consumers like you and me are expected to spend a total of $17 billion buying drones. And businesses and local governments account for the remaining $13 billion. That $13 billion is what Nix is going after.
So right now we're targeting the utility companies. Agriculture is huge. We can do what's called precision intervention and really pinpoint for farmers where their issue is in the field. Instead of spraying the whole 1,000 acres, for example, we can show a farmer where the issue is in his field, and then they can spray just that area, saving them millions of dollars over a period of time.
Real estate is also a growing drone market. A national survey shows while the majority of realtors don't use drones now, 18% said they plan to in the future. And that means dollar signs for FAA commercial drone pilots.
You're allowed to go up to 400 feet. That plane is probably a couple thousand feet.
Ray Bukta is not affiliated with DWS, but has been flying drones for a few years now. He works at Delaware Digital Video Factory in Fairfax and was FAA certified last year. Bukta says being able to get aerial shots adds a lot to his video production work.
It's an emerging market. Definitely a lot of potential out there. It's hard to put a number on it, I would say, but it's definitely fun to watch and fun to be involved in because there's a lot of stuff coming on the horizon. And then you also have like Amazon and all these places that UPS that want to start delivering with drones, and that's a whole nother industry in itself. But 10, 20 years from now, we may have drones flying all over the place.
When you think about it, there are so many applications for drones. Law enforcement can use them instead of helicopters for search and rescue. Insurance companies could use them to survey storm damage, and the list goes on. And Nick says that most drone operators, Mark, can earn a six-figure salary.
So does everybody who wants to fly a drone have to get certified by the FAA and go through that?
No, not if you're just a hobbyist and flying drones for fun. But if you are being paid or contracted to be paid to fly a drone, then yes, you do need to be FAA certified. That said, whether you're flying for fun or getting paid to do so, the FAA has developed some rules to regulate drone usage just because they've become so popular. So, for example, you can't fly drones over a highway or over people for obvious reasons.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. So if the school is tuition free, how does Drone Workforce Solutions how do they keep themselves going? How do they sustain themselves?
Good question.
Right.
So the inaugural class didn't have to pay tuition because DWS got this Department of Labor grant, as I mentioned in the story. DWS is applying for that grant again, and if they get it, then the tuition will be free for the next class. If they don't get the funding, tuition per student will be $6,000.
So if somebody wants to learn more, how do they get involved?
So you can email Theo Nix through the website, droneworkforcesolutions.com. And I know that Theo has said he's going to be hosting several information sessions just ahead of future classes.
Great. Thanks so much, Shirley. Last month, details of an unprecedented meeting between Pope Francis and a victim of sexual abuse by a Catholic priest took place. The comment that made international headlines was Pope Francis' statement that the victim, who is gay, was told, "God made you this way, and it's okay." The man in the meeting was Juan Carlos Cruz. We met him in 2015 as he told us his story. His Delaware connection is that he's a former executive with DuPont, and he now heads brand management and advertising for Dow DuPont's agricultural spinoff, Corteva.
This is the El Bosque parish in Chile, a place Juan Carlos Cruz attended seminary to become a priest, until he started to be abused at the hands of highly respected priest Father Fernando Caradima. It all started for Cruz after the death of his father.
From the minute he talked to me, he told me, "Juan Carlos, you are blessed. The Lord has done something great with you. He has brought you to me. I'm going to be your father. I'm going to replace your father." So I was going to confession, and suddenly he started touching me, and all went downhill from there. I was paralyzed. Shame to say that it went on for 8 years. And it produces me a lot of shame and embarrassment.
Once Cruz finally escaped Caradima and the church, he tried to tuck away his pain and move on with life.
For some people it works, for others it just eats you up. And so I've had friends that have died, have committed suicide. And for me, that's I think what made me come out and speak out about this.
Cruz joined 2 other victims to publicly accuse Caradima of abuse and other church leaders of covering it up. A criminal investigation confirmed their accusations, but the statute of limitations had expired. Now, a civil lawsuit against the Archdiocese starts in March. The Vatican has sentenced Caradima to a life of prayer and penitence, which Cruz says is not a just punishment.
He's living in a convent. We say he's like an all-inclusive because he's being treated really well. He's not in the parish, or he cannot have contact with people, so that's a big triumph. But he never paid really for what he had done.
Cruz has received lots of support in Chile, even from Chilean President Michelle Bachelet, who connected with Cruz during a January visit to the port of Wilmington.
As soon as she arrived in the port of Wilmington and she came, there was a lot of people, and she came to see some workers that were Chilean workers, and I was standing with them. And then so she said hello to them in Spanish, and then she saw me and she said, Juan Carlos, I can't believe it. And she gave me a big hug and a kiss. It really means a lot because wow, how the tides have turned, you know, when we were these scared men talking about sexual abuse, and now we can help others by speaking out.
He's also written a book about his experience and started a foundation to help other victims.
And I know too many people who have died not trying. And it breaks my heart. And it makes me cry every time I think of them, because some were my friends. And, you know, I don't want anybody to have to go through that.
In an interview with the website The Jesuit Review, Cruz is quoted describing his meeting with the Pope. "I saw a compassionate man who was caring for someone, not worrying if we were gay, straight, brown, or white." Cruz's book is in its third printing in Spanish, and there's an English version as well. Fernando Karadima is now 87 and still lives at the Vatican. A movie about abuse in the church in Chile was produced in 2015.
As Delaware public schools struggle with low to moderate proficiency, big proposals are afoot for school financing and how to educate low-income children. Education reporter Chris Barish recently sat down with a school board member to discuss these issues that his district is struggling with. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Shirley. John Young from the Christina School District isn't one to mince his words or hesitate to take a contrarian position, and he didn't hold back as our first person this week. In January, the ACLU sued the state and Delaware's 3 counties, and they argue that Delaware's funding system unconstitutionally deprives many children of their right to an adequate education. They say that too often children with the greatest needs get the lowest amount of resources, and that this contributes greatly to the achievement gap of 25 to 30 points in achievement between children who are poor and children of means. So what, if anything, is wrong with the funding system in Delaware?
Well, it's a great topic, and so the Christina School Board, just shortly after the lawsuit was announced by the ACLU, I authored a resolution in support of the lawsuit, and the board passed it. So the Christina School Board is in favor of the ACLU's action. And most importantly, this lawsuit seeks a declaratory judgment against the state, which is really designed to take the issue of whether or not we fund our schools correctly into the General Assembly to align the way in which we fund schools with the Constitution, which is the allegation. Right now, we just struggle in kind of a morass of different funding streams, state, federal, and local, and in most cases, particularly for the students you mentioned, the ones in poverty, the ones learning English, the ones with special education needs, is simply inadequate.
So we spend almost $14,000 a year per student, and it's one of the leading amounts in the country. What is it about? Is it the money just distributed unequally? Is it go to teachers, the higher paid teachers work in the better schools, so that's where the money goes? Right. What is it about the system?
I think the problem is the design. It's the unit funding design. So there's a giant gap in the way the units are deployed. So, for example, specialists in our schools, art teachers, music teachers, librarians, all those positions are funded out of teacher units. They're not funded through their own stream. So when you say the money's for teachers or the units get to the kids, they don't all get to the kids in terms of classrooms that would actually create smaller class sizes. So we really need to fundamentally take a look at the base positions in schools for specialists and automatically fund those and have the unit funding actually contribute to teachers and classroom size, which we don't do right now.
So we'll stay tuned on that one. So let's turn to Christina for a moment. Sure. The Carney administration, the teachers union, the district, and even the board has voted to move forward on a plan that would essentially close 3 elementary schools in Wilmington and take the 2 other schools in Wilmington and make them into buildings to serve children in 1st through 8th grade. And you know these schools all need a lot of help. They're underutilized. Their academic performance is pretty low. You voted against the plan. What was your opposition?
And they're also under-resourced, which is, I think, what Governor Carney was trying to address. My reason for voting no was I don't feel there was a substantive or meaningful engagement of the communities that are going to be affected by our action. The only town hall of no was the one the governor had last November, and it was a steady stream of please don't do this to our schools, with lots of concerns being raised about mixing 1st graders with 8th graders, bus patterns, neighborhood patterns, whether or not students from certain neighborhoods would be able to get along with students from other neighborhoods. And while those things may come to not be issues, I don't think we spent an adequate amount of time researching those issues before we made the vote. And as far as the money goes, two issues with the money. There's not enough, again, with the 1.5 million being offered as a maximum amount going through the Department of Innovation, and then the $15 million ask on the capital side is going to require a $3.75 million referendum from the Christina taxpayers in order to release that money. And that's only if the General Assembly agrees to an 80-20 split as opposed to the traditional 60-40.
So they want to institute this plan school year 2019. Is it going to happen in your opinion?
It's going to happen. Whether or not it's successful or not is a whole other issue. My concern is that based on the amount of support and planning, in fact, we just missed our first 2 deadlines and had to grant time extensions to the state, to the teachers union, to the district administration to continue to work on the plan. So I'm concerned already that we're out of the gate in the wrong direction. So hopefully it won't happen. My fear, rather, is that the plan is kind of DOA. That's not that I want that to happen, it's just that I don't feel that it's getting the adequate support from the parties at this time.
Christina's consolidation plan might not be dead on arrival, as Young suggests, but it does have some major hurdles to overcome.
So can the district, Chris, and the state make it happen in time for the 2019-2020 school year, which is just 15 months away? It seems pretty ambitious.
Well, the Carney administration initially wanted to close the 3 elementary schools, Stubbs, Palmer, and Pulaski, for the coming school year, just 3 months away. Right. But the board realized that was way too soon and wisely decided to postpone it for another year. But still, at the same time, spending $15 million to renovate 2 aging 3-story buildings is a mammoth project, and they don't even have a concrete plan yet. Now, besides that, there's still a lot to do behind the scenes for a plan that isn't exactly popular with the public. Christina's never been very good with public relations, so they're going to have to do a lot to keep families apprised of the progress, and they're going to need to hold several community meetings as the plan ramps up for the ultimate conversion. Yeah,
they're going to have to get pretty good fast. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm sure you're going to keep us updated. And you can see more of Chris's reports at WHYY.org/news.
Famed artist Pablo Picasso died back in 1973, but his art and influence are still with us in a big way. Sydney Picasso, Pablo's daughter-in-law, recently visited the pilot school in Wilmington to talk to students about her famous father-in-law, about the importance of art in education, and to see what Pablo-inspired art the students are producing. Here's this week's First Experience.
Sydney Picasso, and I grew up in Wilmington, went to Tatnall School, which was Miss Tatnall's school at the time. The year that I left to go to France, my future husband left to go to New York, and he became a photographer. We did not meet until after his father died, and he was obliged to return to France in 1973. And we met, and there were a couple of years, and then we finally got together and got married. Then went into settling the Picasso estate, which was at that time like opening a treasure trove. After 1981, when the estate was settled, there was a big show in New York, and that sort of opened the, the sort of Picasso chapter of the 80s and 90s.
We have been working on inspired work of Pablo Picasso, and it has been really fun doing it.
We've been working on Picasso, which has been fun. My favorite thing about what we did with Picasso was we did faces, and one of the faces I did was like spring themed because I wanted it to be spring.
They've been working 4 or 5 months on it. They have not been reading about him, which is probably good. They've been looking, which is important. So looking, seeing, hearing, I think is more important. I think it's important because, first of all, it's inspirational, but it enables children to have a dimension that they didn't know was there. Gives them something that they own.
I think my favorite part was having a lot of freedom on what we were doing.
You could have different colors of all sorts, and they could be weirdly put on things, and that would still look good because that's what this was kind of going for, which I liked a lot.
it gives them something very particular and special, because none of them is alike. You see, it's unique, and so each human being is a unique creature. I think we have to realize that being different is not being special or odd or not fitting in. It's really about each of us being a unique human individual.
Art is a way of expressing yourself in a lot of ways. Maybe that day you got a bruise and so you draw a picture of a Band-Aid. Art is also fun. It lets you be creative. I mean, you can be creative in other things, but I like art a lot.
Well, it's a great skill and it's really fun. And it could be a great career when you grow up. A great and really fun career. Art is probably my favorite subject in school, in fact.
Recycled pizza boxes were used to create the eyes and mouths and other parts that the students were using to build the big Picasso faces. It was a homecoming of sorts for Sydney Picasso. She called Wilmington home at one time, and her mother was an owner of WDEL Radio. Our thanks to the Pilot School for allowing us into their beautiful building. You can get more information on the school by visiting pilotschool.org.
And next week on First, we'll look at the transgender debate taking place in Delaware. Proposed regulations trying to protect students may end up infringing on the rights of parents. And take a tour around Delaware's wetland areas. The views are amazing, and you will never get as close to nature as you can in this story.
We'll have to see it to believe it. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Chris Barish, Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. We're going to step aside a few minutes early for television membership drive, but before that, we're going to leave you with some pretty spring scenes at Valley Garden Park near Greenville. Have a great week.